Freaky Friends. This is Margaret.
And this is Colleen.
And
we're the Cousins Weird.
And we're in the basement pod because it's cool down here and it's freaking 80 degrees outside.
Yeah, so if our sound's a little different, well, we're using my phone to record today because I forgot everything. And we're having a cookout, so I couldn't go home and get it. And
we're at the 4th of July cookout.
Yeah.
But it's Sunday before the 4th.
Yeah, it's the 2nd of July, but we're celebrating today.
And I want it to be festive. And my topic today has to do with the Revolutionary War because it's July 4th and I thought it would be appropriate.
Perfect.
So, anything new going on with you?
Let's see. Summer hours, it started at work. And I'm really excited because I'm going on vacation next week.
Yeah.
So that's exciting. Going to Wanakina, my favorite place in the world. But other than that, that's nothing. Nothing new.
We had our stray cat ended up having kittens.
Right. We talked about that, but
and then we did.
We talked about it having the kitten, but we haven't been. Yeah. That night, it didn't make it, didn't it?
It didn't make it.
The same night.
It made it the first night and the second day, and then the next night by the morning it wasn't alive, and it was sad. But she's real nice to the kitten we have that we adopted, Crunchy. So
right.
She's been very motherly and snuggly with her, which is really nice. Which I'm glad, which is what I was hoping she would be doing. Anyway.
Right.
So, all right. I don't know. There's not a lot going on.
I'm trying to think if there's anything
other than sweating my arse off.
Fun or funny. I know it's been muggy. Our air quality has been terrible this week.
Back
again
up with the wildfires from
I cannot see you.
Quebec. Maybe I should move the chair so it's really
I
strange.
just see your body with no head, and
I'm headless.
It's creeping me out, man.
Nearly headless.
Nearly headless Nick. So that's better.
Even though we don't want to talk about Twatsy.
No, that's the thing. Like, I love Harry Potter. I don't like the author. Like, how do you
separate
artists from their art when it comes to? It has such sentimental value for me. I Griffin.
Know, and I really want to read the books with my kids, but I also don't want to open up the door, just because it's like, even though I already own the books. It's like the kids will read them and love them, and then it's like, we want to go to Universal and go to
I know.
Hogwarts,
I don't want to give her money.
But I don't want her to get any money.
And I wonder too, like, so how there's like if you buy the official licensed stuff, she gets the money. But if you bought stuff on Etsy and an independent artist made it, she gets none of that.
Right.
So it's like, I don't support her. However, there's so much sentimental value wrapped up in Harry Potter for me because Griffin's nursery was decorated in it. Mm-hmm. Griffin, I read the books to Griffin in utero. Like, he was quoted the movies. Like, it was our thing, and it still is our thing. And I can't give that part up, but will not buy anything further with her to give her money. I own all the stuff already.
Right.
But I wouldn't buy another book if she came out with it.
My youngest is down here with us, and her name's Ruby. You want to say hi to everybody? Hi. She just lost one of her front teeth the other day, and she looks adorable.
She got the cutest smile in the whole wide world.
She just turned 7.
Mm-hmm.
So this topic, it gets kind of sad, but it's not like at some of our other topics.
Yeah, there's some topics we'd be like,
we're not talking about the mother of rabbits or anything.
No. Or the invention of a chainsaw. We're not talking about the reasoning for that. So it's pretty safe for her.
This is a historical one. It's going back to my nerdy history.
I love history stuff.
Roots. And I'm going to, the book that I based this on was called The Ghost Ship of Brooklyn, and it was by Robert P. Watson. It's The Ghost Ship of Brooklyn, an untold story of the American Revolution. And it was something that I didn't know about. And like most people, when you mention the American Revolution, the 3 things I think about are the Boston Massacre, the Boston Tea Party, and the Midnight Ride of Paul Revere. Those are the things you think of, You think Philadelphia, you think Boston, and then...
Oh, I think Hamilton the musical.
I don't think they talk about this in Hamilton.
I don't think they do either.
Although they do touch on this in Outlander.
Oh.
In the books. I don't know if they've gotten that far in the movies yet, but in the books.
That's cool.
Like, Jamie ends up on a prison ship.
Okay.
Which is what this is about. there's something that occurred during the war that would claim more lives than the total that would be lost in combat.
Oh.
So we're saying most people are unaware of this, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. Is the prison hulks in the harbor of the Wallabout Bay in the East River of Brooklyn. So and they were moored there, and it's real swampy there, marshy. But that's where these places were. So Walt Whitman wrote an article for the Brooklyn Standard over 60 years after the revolution was done, referred to them as a vast and silent army of ghosts scattered in shallow graves along the waterfront of Brooklyn. So, I mean, there was... I'll tell you at the end, the total number of people that died on these prison was over 11,000.
Holy crap!
Which, the amount of men that died in combat was, I don't even think...
Just a few thousand?
4,435 Americans listed as died in battles in the Revolutionary War.
11,000.
11,500 would be killed by the British on these ships.
Wow.
Through either physically killing them or from neglect, basically.
I was going to say, it was like dying of
right.
starvation or dehydration or whatever.
Walt Whitman, he says, is a vast and silent army. He's referring to the American prisoners that perished aboard the floating British prison ships moored off the coast of Brooklyn. This is the Wallabout Bay, is what they talk about. The British kept thorough documents and the names of the captured ships, as well as a record of the names of captured prisoners and all the deaths. So they were meticulous record keepers, the British.
Okay.
So they can look and see, this guy came in and he died this day. Like, they have dates and everything. It's insane.
That's crazy.
And the names of the different ships. Most of his book, Robert Watson's book, is based mostly on the written memoirs of 5 men and boys who survived on these ships. Christopher Hawkins, Thomas Dring, Thomas Andros, Ebenezer Fox, and Andrew Sherburne. I'll mention some excerpts from what some of these men wrote, but 60 years after the fact, they were trying to, there was a law passed that was going to give pensions to men that survived after they could prove that they fought in the Revolution for the Americas for at least a year, then there was a pension allotted to them. And so these men, and they actually, they were really pushing these men to write everything down. Write it all down. And that they used that a lot for proof. I was here, and then I was on the ship for 4 or 5 years as a prisoner of war. And I mean, so this is how they got money from the government, by writing all these stories down, which is nice because it gives us a written account from the perspective of the soldiers. And I'm saying soldiers in quotation marks because these men were not soldiers. They were farmers.
They weren't trained soldiers. Right. They just picked up their pitchforks and went.
And most of them were teenagers. Boys. Right. Some of them as young as 10,
That's crazy.
So a lot of his research is based on the writings of these men who actually survived from the HMS Jersey, which was the worst of them.
So one of the 11,000 that died.
Some lived. There were so many men on those boats. We'll get to how many died a day.
Oh, God.
It was terrible. Christopher Hawkins, who was a young boy when he was sent to the ships, wrote, "Among the various modes adopted by the British during the Revolution for taming the American people into submission to the English yoke, none were more barbarous and more revolting to humanities than the cruelties inflicted by means of the prison ships." So that was the worst thing that could happen to you in the war, worse than death.
You'd rather die.
Most of these men would, and it's they lost all hope.
And that's the point of the British were to make them feel
right. Well, what it was is the British tried to use these ships as a form of you don't want to defy us because we'll send you on one of those. And it wasn't just it wasn't just soldiers. It was
anyone,
anybody who said anything,
spoke against the crown.
Yeah, if you didn't say I ally myself with King George, they would just throw you on the thing just because they could. It's like, oh, you're treason. You're against England.
You're against the crown.
Even you could be against the crown if you say you weren't with the crown, then you were against the crown.
Right.
I mean, that's his
if you're not with me, you're against me.
Exactly. And so they were using it as a means to
submit,
scare them.
Yeah, get them to
it
submit
had the
to the crown.
Effect. Like after men escaped, because I mean these are just stripped down ships that were anchored in or chained down in this bay. I mean, they couldn't really, I mean, they were so weak, like, they didn't, like, these men can't escape because they can't, but some of them did. Some of them had help. Some of them did escape. And the stories they told after they got off made the colonists so angry that helped them fight
fuel their
They're like, this
rage.
is why we're fighting against them, because they're doing this to people. Like, how dare they? You know, it was terrible.
So it backfired on the British.
It really did. From the year 1776 to 1783.
1776. If you're a Hamilton fan, you get that.
The British retained control over New York City and Long Island and used old and captured ships to house soldiers and sailors captured in battle. They also liked to put civilians in them if they supported the Patriot cause or even were suspected of it. So, if you also refuse to swear an oath of allegiance to the Crown of England, in you go. Mm-hmm. So, and they would capture privateers, and they were trying to press people they caught into service for the crown. So, like, you have two choices. You can either join our Navy or we'll put you on a prison ship. And most of them would join the Navy until they could escape.
Right.
And a lot of it was, we're just on a ship. And most of, like, cabin boys, they're all, like, young kids. They're like, whatever, I'm alive. And then as soon as they could, they would
run away.
Right. But most of the people, once they got on these ships, they were like, most of them didn't submit. They're like, no.
Right.
I'm not going to submit to you. And it was like,
because they're probably going to die anyway. Right. So why go out there?
Oh, no, the British wanted them to just say, we pledge our allegiance to the Crown of England. And they're like, okay, off you go.
Oh, they would let them go.
Yeah, but back then, there was, like, honor, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And so, like,
there's loyalty
most men,
honor.
if they gave their word, it meant something. So, like, a lot of them were like, I can't give you my word because I don't feel it, you know? And a lot of them were, you'd have to be pretty dire.
Right.
To do it.
Lie.
Right.
Yeah.
These ships were anchored in the Wallabout Bay on the East River in Brooklyn. The worst of the ships was called the HMS Jersey, which would hold over 1,000 prisoners at once. And about 6 to 12 men would die daily due to the poor conditions on board.
That's horrible.
The ship was known, like the people who knew about it, referred to it as Hell Afloat or just Hell. They called it Hell. Right.
Horrible.
Some of the things that you could catch while you were on, like there was smallpox, dysentery, typhoid, yellow fever. You had polluted water, malnutrition, and torture. Because the commissioners on these, the prison commissioners, they were there because they liked causing pain.
Yeah.
You know, you didn't get that job because you're a nice guy.
They were sadists.
Basically, yeah. The British used threat of imprisonment on one of these hulks as a way of keeping the colonials in line.
Oh, God.
As a way to deter them from their uprising against the crown, the upstarts. They kept the ships moored in the bay, close enough for it to be smelled, but far enough for its pestilence not to spread into the city. So you're downwind and you could smell these. That's
awful.
Reeked. They were bad. However, some prisoners found ways to escape and spread tales of the cruelty to be found on the ships. And instead of being a deterrent, as the British hoped, it became a symbol of their tyranny. It became a beacon of inspiration that turned loyalists to the Patriot cause. It has been said that these ships and what they stood for may have been what turned the tide for the Americans in their fight for independence.
Wow.
So, I mean, they started pretty much from the beginning. The HMS Jersey was built at Plymouth Dockyard, which is in England, and launched on June 14th, 1736. It was 144 feet long, 41-foot beam, weighed over 1,000 tons, and the keel measured 17 feet below the surface of the water. It was considered a fast ship for the time. The Jersey was considered a fourth-rate ship due to it only having 60 guns. So they rated a ship by how many guns it could carry. So this one was 24 24-pound cannons, 26 9-pound cannons, 8 6-pound cannons, and 2 small guns in the front. And it had the capability to carry 14 more guns. It would carry a total of 450 soldiers. So remember in the beginning I said there was 1,000 men on this?
Yeah.
But
450 soldiers.
Were sailors. 450 sailors is what this carried. Yeah, that's like what it was built for. They had
they put 1,000 people.
450. I'm saying comfortably, as comfortable.
It's probably not comfortable either.
As a ship could be,
yeah.
Right? And they're hanging, their hammocks are next to each other. You know, there's not a lot of room.
But they have 1,000 people on it,
right?
So where did the crew stay? Like the people that are doing
there was no crew at this point. Like once they became prison hulks, there was no crew.
But someone was in charge of torture and stuff.
Most of them didn't stay on.
Oh, okay. They just went. They were
there.
Gotcha.
And they worked, and then they would leave. They didn't want to sleep there.
No. Mm-mm. Yeah, because that's true. It was in a bay, so they could go to shore.
By 1770, the ship had been damaged during various battles. I mean, between the time this ship was made and the Revolution, England had been at war with Spain. They're warring with France. Or warring with everybody over there was warring with each other because they wanted land. Mm-hmm. They want this island and they want that piece of land. And so it had been in quite a few battles. It never won any of its battles. So it was considered an unlucky ship. Damaged a lot, been fixed. It had been moved to the Americas and had been hulked. And what they mean when they say that a ship has been hulked, or they call it a hulk, it means it involves removing the cannons, the bridge, the mast, the sails, and the figurehead to be used to house supplies and to be a floating hospital. And it basically, they had to be towed places. So if they wanted to bring it someplace, it was no longer capable of sailing there because it had no mast, it had no sails, it had no wheel. It just had to be towed like a barge. So what they would do is they would bring it someplace and they could use it as a hospital, or they could use it as a prison, which is what they end up doing it. But a lot of times it was used to store goods for the Navy in the bay, so they didn't have to come to shore. Right. They could just
store
pull
things
up next to it and pull stuff off, whether it's gunpowder or food or whatever, you know. By 1778, the decaying ship was moved to the East River in New York during the Revolution and converted to a store ship. And during the winter of 1779 to 80, the Jersey became a floating dungeon.
Gross. I don't like that.
Yeah, there was more than one. There was quite a few ships that they did it to. According to the 1770 census, the population of New York City at this time was 3,600 people lived in New York City.
Okay.
After the Battle of Brooklyn, the English, General Howe, who was an English general, he had taken around 4,000 prisoners, and in the weeks following, another 1,000 prisoners who were citizens of New York City were arrested on suspicion of supporting the Patriots.
Who was left?
And New York City became known as the city of prisons. Many of the large buildings were confiscated by the British to use as prisoners. So, after the Battle of Brooklyn, New York City at this point, there's 3,600 people living there. And then there's a battle there, and the British take 4,000 prisoners that they bring to the city. There's more prisoners than there are people that live there. And then they arrest 1,000 more people that live there. So, it's
now there's even more prisoners.
Where do these people go? They were arrested. So there was tons of them. Some of these people might have just been arrested so they could take their building.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
You know, so a lot of large, they call them sugar houses and anything that was large, like schools or universities, they would be taken and turned into prisons.
Wow.
And then eventually in 1776, they were running out of room to store the prisoners and decided to start transferring them to large storage transport vessels, or hulks, anchored around the city. And eventually, they towed most of them to the Wallabout Bay in Brooklyn. And this practice the practice of using hulks for prisoners has been used in England since the 1600s. So they started it there, because it's easy. We have these old ships. They're not really seaworthy. We're using them for storage. Why don't we store prisoners on them?
Right.
They can't escape.
Right.
And they could try, but in England, they're in the ocean. You know, so it's there's nothing on them. There's no guns anymore. You just have a few, you just throw them in the hole and you close them up. And the portals are all
sealed.
Yeah, they're barred up or closed over. We should make them horrible.
The smell alone.
Oh, awful. To be put on
Hot.
one of these hulks was a great fear of a prisoner. Like, that was, like, the worst.
I can imagine.
Yeah. By the end of 17...
And you're rocking and moving all the time.
Well, you're just kind of, like, they're usually chained down with multiple chains, so they don't move around, but they have to move up and down. Right. After a while, like, sailors don't even notice it. You know, they talk about
but if you're shoved in there...
Yeah.
1,000 people in a 450-person area.
By the end of 1776, in the span of 2 months, 2,000 to 2,500 prisoners would die from disease and starvation in 2 months. Over 2,000 men died. Isn't that nuts?
Because they're shoved in such small quarters, one person gets sick, forget it.
Some prisoners from Connecticut, and I think they were on a hulk called the Whitby. One of them was Ichabod Perry. He was a 17-year-old kid. And David Thorpe, who were both on hulks but got released, stated that a third of the prisoners below deck would die of suffocation from the heat. And Perry stated that he was so starved that he could cut his own flesh. That he could eat his own flesh without wincing. That's how starved he was.
Oh, God.
And
that's a nightmare.
He survived by eating the rotting wood that the ship was made of. That's what he ate.
Wow.
That's
desperation.
It really is. Thorpe said that 4 days a week, they would get a little wormy oatmeal. While the other 3 days, they would get 2 ounces of salted beef and a hard biscuit. And they would go as long as 3 days without water or food.
That's horrible.
And sometimes they'd get food, sometimes they'd get water, sometimes they'd get both, and they get a little bit. And they had what they called mess. They would divide the soldiers up into their own mess. And like they would say group 1, and they would all come up and they'd get their allotment of food and they'd go to the galley. And there is a cook there who would prepare things, but there was a copper pot that they were allowed to use to cook food in. But the water they were given was from the bay. Oh. The bay where they dump their latrines and they're dead.
It's dirty, sludgy.
And most of them got sick from the water because the fresh water was not fresh.
No, that's real beaver fever there.
It's salty. I mean, there's salt water in the bay. I mean, it's just like
salty poop.
And that's what they gave them
water
to use for washing or for anything else was that water. And so like they're all trying to cook a handful of food in a copper pot, and they would all like a lot of times they would cook their food together and then divvy it up. Right. And sometimes they're trying to cook, and they're like everybody had their own like ladle that they would try to cook with, and they're all fighting for a spot around this kettle so they could cook their food. And if the commissioner was in a bad mood, he's like, "Okay, you guys are done," before they even got to eat, and so they wouldn't get their food. They'd be given rotten meat to eat. Ugh. If they got meat, usually it was rotten or it was like really hard salted meat that they couldn't even chew because they're weak. So they'd use their water ration to soften it, and then they try to cook it so it was edible. And a lot of times they couldn't even eat it, you know.
That's awful.
It's terrible. Ugh.
How people can treat another human being in that way is beyond me.
Well, the British they looked at them as not equal because they were treasoners. They were against England, so they weren't even on the same level.
But if you think about just with people being enslaved and the way there's still another human being. How do you do that to another human being? I don't understand it.
Wow. When men were processed onto the ship, their clothes would be stolen. And they would be beaten and abused by the soldiers processing them. But, like, they were allowed to have, some of them, like officers were treated marginally better than non-officers, and they would have their own space. But they were still in a cramped area.
Right.
And they're like, a lot of times they let the officers keep some of their clothes. But, like, they would get there, and the people would, they'd take their clothes and give them rags, and then they would sell the clothes. Because that's, like, in the 1700s, like, the guy working for you is not getting paid much. So, like, why wouldn't he? Mm-hmm. You know, he doesn't care about anybody.
No.
By May of 1777, the beaches in the bay couldn't hold any more graves. So they would tie a cannonball to the dead and throw them overboard. Or
great.
Sometimes not. Sometimes they just
let them lay there. Oh, just throw them over.
Just throw them over. I mean, this is a stationary boat. So anything that's getting thrown over isn't going very far. No. You know, like eventually with that many bodies and that much poop, like it's disgusting. The water is disgusting. It's not moving. They're in kind of a marshy area anyway. Keep in mind, at this point, there was only one hulk in the bay, the Whitby, which held roughly 250 prisoners. Right? The ship was replaced by 2 more, each holding 250 prisoners. Conditions were so bad that the prisoners set one of the boats on fire.
Ew.
Death preferable to slowly suffering from disease and starvation. Some men died on the ship. Some survived. They jumped ship.
Right.
And they were collected, and then the survivors were placed on the other ship. So we're talking 250 on one. Each one had 250 men. Say 200 survived on the one. They just threw them in with the other ones.
So just add more.
Just added more.
Yep.
2 more ships were brought. And 4 months later, one of those ships would also be set aflame by its prisoners. And after this, they stopped letting the prisoners have lamps and candles at night.
Because they're they'll burn down the ship. Yeah.
I mean, why are they going to do it at night and not during the day? Like, they can just easily do it during the day. But they would do stuff like that at night. In 1778, another ship was added that held 500 prisoners. In 1780, 6 more were added, and one of those was also burned. So they burned a few of them. The ships would come and go, and some recommissioned, others sold for parts. So, like, sometimes they'd say, "Oh, we need this ship back. This one we could make it seaworthy," and they'd take it back, and they'd give them a different ship, and it was just kind of like a trading, like one would be there, and then it wouldn't be, and they'd set a few aflame. And this bay, as I said, was surrounded by swamps, which deterred the chance of swimming to freedom. It had lots of mud and swampy, marshy around
easy to
the bay.
try to get away.
So in one area you have, like, it's open, and then behind it, like where the land is, it's real marshy and muddy.
Yeah, gross, sludgy stuff.
In 1780, the Jersey, had been a prison ship since 1778, was towed to Wallabout Bay, holding 400 prisoners. It was intended for 450 sailors. By 1781, it held 850 prisoners. The next year, there were over 1,000.
Oh, Jesus.
1783, 1,200 people were imprisoned below deck in this rotting, leaking hell.
That's horrifying.
It held half the prisoners in New York City were on the ship. Half.
That's
crazy. Put on the ship. Yeah. They would be, when it rained, they'd be wet. In the summer, they would be so hot, and it would be so stuffy that it would be hard to breathe. Some would suffocate and die.
Yeah.
In the winter, they would freeze. They didn't have any blankets. They didn't have anything. Just each other.
Right.
And they're all emaciated and starving. Any of them that slept near any of the portals that were still, like, some portals were barred, they would wake up covered with snow, and they'd get frostbite. They would lose it was
toes
awful.
And everything.
All the portholes were nailed shut, making it very dark on board. Small notches were drilled into the sides to allow for ventilations. Every 10 feet, there'd be a set of these square ventilations notched in. The air would become so foul that lamps would not burn. Like, they couldn't light lamps.
Because there wasn't, like, enough oxygen.
Right, and it was
for the fire
it was moist. It was...
Yeah, like humid
befouled. It was awful. Yeah, and it was like
thick.
They couldn't keep lamps lit.
That's disgusting.
Yeah. The men would gasp for air at night and would sleep on hammocks and the floor. So there's hammocks hung, and there's men sleeping under the hammocks. Some of them had to sit to sleep because there wasn't enough room to lay down. Or they'd lay on each other.
Right.
Like, there wasn't any room.
Right, there
wouldn't 1,000
be.
men in a boat, or 1,200 men in a boat for 450.
Right, that's 3 times as many people supposed to be on it.
In a sailing vessel, only half the crew asleep at a time because they do it in shifts.
Right, and if they were locked down below...
Yeah, and there was 3 levels. There was the top. Wait, the top was not a level, but there was 3 levels of
below
prisoners.
deck.
Right,
yeah.
And they were allowed to come up during the day. They would come up in shifts on the top for air. But at night, they were all locked underneath. And they could only get out from... There was an opening, like a square opening, that they'd put a ladder down.
That's so gross.
They could get up that way. But other than that, they couldn't get out.
Can you imagine if you were on the bottom level?
Well, that was saved. I'll talk about it in a minute.
That's disgusting.
Yeah.
I can't handle it.
I
feel like I can't breathe right now.
Large tubs were used as latrines. So at night, they didn't have light, and they weren't allowed to go up deck. So they had to use the big tubs to go to the bathroom. And they were called receptacles of filth and would overflow onto the floor. And unlucky is the man who had to sleep next to them. Because they literally were sleeping in shit and
That's
piss.
disgusting.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't like it.
Yeah. Then no lamps or candles were allowed at night for fear of fires again.
Well, they wouldn't be able to light them anyway.
The 3 decks of the ship, the Europeans were kept on the bottom deck. any Europeans they caught in war, they put them on the bottom. And the bottom deck was the worst
I
deck.
can imagine.
Yep. The top 2 floors were for Americans. And a lot of times they would be separated into, like, soldiers and civilians, or officers had their own area.
Okay.
Men would die and wouldn't be discovered for 10 days.
Right.
It was because they would start to be corrupt. Like, they would rot, and that's how they knew.
That's how they knew.
Yeah.
Because of smell and gross.
It already smells like death.
Right. So it took a while for it to...
The lowest deck was the worst. The salt water and extreme emaciation. I mean, these boats all leaked, and they had to pump the bilge daily, otherwise they would sink. So, like, that's what some of the prisoners did. And so the below deck is where the water settled.
Right.
So the salt water and extreme emaciation made their skin look like parchment.
Ew.
Ebenezer Fox said that they were the most miserable and disgusting looking, unwashed and wearing rags.
They're just, like, pruned up.
From salt water.
And then no food.
The European prisoners had the highest death rates on the ship. Obviously, they're in the worst
conditions.
Worst conditions, yep. Thomas Dring was one of them. He's one of the
Their skin was probably just, like, falling off them.
Off.
Ugh.
Thomas Dring was imprisoned on the Jersey in the summer of 1782 and said that he never saw a soldier imprisoned of the ship. They were all American privateers where he was on his level.
So he never saw a soldier.
He never saw any that were soldiers. They were all just privateers that they took hold of. I mean, privateers were, like, think pirates. And a lot of privateers had, like, they were running lines. They were basically smuggling.
Right.
And some of them are doing it legally for America, you know?
Yeah, for the war.
And so the British catch them and they're like, you're going to work for us. You're going on to prison. And some of them would say, I'm not pledging my allegiance and I'm not working in your Navy. And then they get put on the hulk. And then a lot of them did that. A lot of them refused to swear fealty. I think a lot of the younger kids did because they're young. They're kids.
Mm-hmm.
Like kids, like 10 years old, you know?
Right. It's so depressing.
Yeah. These ships even developed their own set of rules among the prisoners, like a self-governance. Punishment for stealing was pretty severe. But they basically had anti-bullying rules for the bigger inmates with the smaller ones. Like, the bigger inmates were not allowed to torture and bully the younger ones, the smaller ones.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, it's, like, crazy that these prisoners had their own...
Like, moral code. Yeah.
Yeah, which is better than the
better than the British, yeah.
The commissary of the prison ship... commissioner of the prison ships was David Sprout. He was not a good guy. He was a Scotsman.
I don't like him already.
He started out on the side of the Americans and then switched over. But he was one of those, or he went where the money was. Whoever's going to pay him the most is where he's going to go.
He had no ethics whatsoever.
No scruples. He was cruel and gloated over the prisoners' deaths. He liked to torture the prisoners by withholding food, water, and medicine. He liked to physically torture them as well. He was known to sell the provisions provided to the prisoners for his own profit. So they're getting about 60% of what a British soldier would get, food-wise. And he's taking that small amount and he's selling it for profit to someone else. And mostly what they would get would be moldy, worm-filled
That's so gross.
bread that they would have to knock on the ground to
crumble it up.
No, they would knock on the ground so the worms would fall out before they would eat it.
Oh, God.
Yeah, there's full of maggots.
That's
so like
so
they would tap it so they
Maybe they should have ate the maggots.
I know, like they probably would have given
better.
them more energy. Just terrible, gross.
It's a horrible thought, but
yeah, the food they got was mostly rancid and filled with vermin, worms, and mold, and mostly had to be eaten raw. Like sometimes they would get meat that they would just give them and they'd have to eat it raw.
Ugh.
Or it was rancid.
Like
if they got meat, like a lot of times they're eating that's that thing that's like, if you think about the grossest thing that you can to eat, and if you were starving in prison and hadn't eaten in a week, would you eat it?
Probably.
If
you're starving enough,
right.
You put something in there to stop the pain. Like, you feel horrible.
Yeah, and they had the big cook pots, and on the HMS Jersey, the cook was actually a prisoner who said, I'll be your cook. So even though he was a cook and he liked to lord it over the other prisoners, he actually was a prisoner himself.
So he felt like he was a higher level.
Right, he had a modicum of power because he was the cook.
Right.
If you could call him that.
Yeah. What are you cooking?
The only water available was from the bay, so it's salty. They dumped their latrines, and they're dead in there. In the winter, men would freeze to death, and they'd have to chisel them
off
the bottom
because they're frozen.
Yeah. And they said by the end of the war, about a dozen prisoners would die every day. Every day there'd be 10 people. You'd wake up, there'd be 12 new dead people.
That's horrible.
Yeah. Men would get frostbite and watch their toes turn black and fall off while they're laying there watching it happen. Isn't it?
What happens? Awful. That's horrible.
There was a widow who lived near the bay who would she was an American. Her husband fought for the American. I guess there's not a lot known about her, but her name was Elizabeth Bergen. And it was said that she was a widow and her husband fought for Washington. And she lived near the bay, and she would take food and medicine to the prisoners. Like, I don't know if every day, but they allowed
when
this.
She could.
Yeah. In 1779, an American officer approached her with a plan to help some of the men escape. They allowed, at this point, women were permitted to board the prison ships to sell or hand out food or medicine. So they could go on there and either sell themselves. I don't know where they think they're getting the money from.
I was going to say, who?
Some
sell
of them,
what?
But some of the, either it was stolen or if they had, some of them, the Thomas Drang, this was the second time he'd been on a prison ship. He had been on one and escaped. And then he ended up on the Jersey. And so he knew, when his ship was taken, he made preparations because he knew
what the conditions were and what
he was
he
looking
needed
for.
to do.
He knew what was going to happen.
Right.
So he had layers of clothes on. He made sure he put on a few more layers of clothes so he had stuff. He squirreled away a few hard biscuits because he knew he was probably the first week won't get any food. So there were things that he did. And sometimes they would let the officers keep a bag of some of their possessions. They were allowed to keep something.
It's weird to me that the officers were allowed to. They're the ones legit fighting.
I know, but it's like an English code.
Oh, yeah, I guess.
There's a war code where officers, you have to be polite. There's certain rules you follow. Even though we're going to starve you to death when you get here. But we'll show you the respect due you to your...
For your position
for your position. Right. Anyway, Elizabeth Bergen. And this officer approaches her, and she's like, I'll help you. They would hide. She would come out on a small boat, and she'd hand out the provisions. And she came the first time after she talked to this officer, the next time she went to the boat, she handed one of the prisoners a note saying the plan. And then, so the next time she came back, they were ready. And a few of them would hide on her boat. She made space in the boat for them to hide so they could sneak onto the boat and hide there so that when she would leave, they would be in the boat with her. So this woman is risking her life. If they had found her, they would have shot all the prisoners and probably her too.
Right.
Over a few weeks, it is estimated that she saved over 200 men off the boat.
Wow.
It's insane. I mean, you're talking between 3 and 5 at a time.
That's crazy.
That's a lot of trips.
That's tons.
She's a bold woman. I guess that he got caught. The officer that she made this plan with ended up getting captured, and she was afraid that they're going to torture him and they're going to find out. And so she went on the run, and it was good because his wife, the officer didn't talk, but his wife did because she's like, I have information. If you let him go, I'll tell you about a woman who's ferreting prisoners off this prison boat. So she went on the road, and she ended up, she's destitute now. She has nothing because she just left. She was afraid to go home because she didn't know if there'd be British soldiers waiting for her. So she wrote to Washington, and all these soldiers came forward to George Washington and vouched for, yes, she saved me off this ship. So he ended up giving her a pension, and she had a place, other officers made the people that she saved gave her a house.
Aww.
I mean, so she's but not a lot is known about her, and I think there should be. People think of Betsy Ross,
right?
Because she sewed the flag.
This woman
was
lives.
Amazing. She saved men. She was brave.
She risked her own life.
She did. So I Elizabeth Bergen, go bitch.
That's right. She's a badass bitch.
She is. So yeah, we should all be more like Elizabeth. With the end of the war, the British paroled. They weren't going to release the prisoners. They went on parole. We'll parole you, for good behavior bullshit. And in the beginning of, this happened in the beginning of 1783. The last few months before they paroled all, so the last few months that there were prisoners on this hulk, 50 men from the Jersey were buried weekly.
Oh, God.
Every week they buried about 50 men. This is right after, they basically had lost already.
I was going to say, the war was...
Right.
Done.
The last men were released on April 9th, of 1783. Many died before they even reached home. They were so in such bad shape.
Oh.
With no one to bail out the bilge, the Jersey sank a short time after the last prisoners left. Because it was a constant thing. It just sank. They just let it sink.
I wonder if there's parts of it still.
They said for years after the war, the tide would bring bones ashore in the bay.
Oh, I bet.
In the 1800s, you could still see bones and timbers in the shallows of the bay.
I bet.
From the boat.
Amount of people dying. The amount of
people. I mean, and that bay, they would go out in the sand and dig graves all the time. And then they ran out of room. And so that's like, there's bodies upon bodies upon bodies. Like so many.
Still there.
Think about 11,500 men. Just
11,000
on the
bodies.
Jersey. Right.
Just one ship.
Just from one ship.
Basically that bay is filled with bodies.
It is. Bones.
Wow.
During the building of the Brooklyn Navy Yard, which was built on the Wallabout Bay, like right in that bay, the same bay. So it's like it would have been right near where the ship was. And they built it in 1801. It was said that with every shovel of dirt, there would be bones, human remains, in every shovel. And the shipyard eventually closed in 1960 after a fire. It's like deemed a historical spot. But there's still people building another shipyard or something there now. In the years following the end of the revolution, bones could be found in the bay after the tide, or there's construction, and they were just like, there'd be a rough water, there'd be human bones in the sand. And they were collected and stored in a crypt in Fort Greene Park called the Martyrs Monument. And it's still there in Brooklyn. You can go see it.
Oh, cool.
The Brooklyn Navy Yard is now a historical site and is also rumored to be haunted. Go figure.
Go figure. 11,000 for one ship.
People say they experience a feeling of unease there. They hear strange noises and see ghostly apparitions. One of a soldier who wanders a shipyard looking for his lost sailors. Sailors, yeah. And it has, in the last decade, started to be redeveloped. But, I mean, and even, there's a lot, they say that the Navy Yard is haunted because there was a lot, like, even during World War II, they were building a lot of boats there. A lot of men died.
Oh, right, in the process,
so it's like there's a lot of, like, I think people think, they always associate the dead with the Navy Yard. I go, what about all the soldiers that died in the Revolutionary War in that bay? But a lot of people don't know about it.
I've never heard of it.
I mean, especially that amount of people. More people died on that boat than died
during the war itself.
Isn't that sickening? Like,
it is.
More than half. They
didn't die in combat. They died from neglect.
Like, it's like a quarter of the amount actually died in battle.
That's crazy.
It's nuts.
I didn't know anything about that.
Yeah. So I thought it was a good topic for today.
It also, though, it's crazy to me. Like, we fought against the British. It spurred our fight. Like, we wanted to, because they were doing these terrible things. But then we enslaved people from Africa and treated them just as bad,
or worse,
worse.
Yeah,
like as nothing, as cattle being bought and sold and tortured, and like they were meaningless creatures.
In some ways, it was worse what we did to the Africans. In a lot of ways, because they were like prisoners without even chains. You know what I mean? Like, it was like generations.
Just ripped all their humanity away from. Yeah,
like
it's
tore families
and
apart.
Like, why? It's like so hard because you're like, this treatment of people made us want to fight harder. But then some of the same people wanted to fight harder, enslaved other human beings and did terrible things to them.
They were slaves then.
Yeah, well, yeah, they were slaves then at that time anyway.
They did a lot of indentured servants then. That was like a thing then too. Yeah. And it was like a lot of the indentured servants came from England and Scotland. Yeah. Like the Jacobites that were in prison after the rebellion, a lot of them were sold into indentured servitude and then were sent to America with 10-year contracts. Like, somebody could basically buy your contract and they owned you for that much time
until you paid it off.
You had so many years. It was almost like it was like being on parole, but somebody else owned you and you had to do what they say. They had the right to beat you.
Well, yeah, if you think of it, like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, they all had slaves.
Oh, they did.
It makes no sense.
I know.
Like, what?
One thing that bothers me too is a lot of these purists that talk about the Constitution and like freedom of religion. Mm-hmm. They're like, well, the people that wrote that, they were all Christians, so
they were not.
They're like, they didn't mean what people think it means now. That's not what they meant. And I'm like, they also didn't mean for women to vote. They only, I go, if you go by what they intended, then the only people that would be allowed to vote right now are old white men who own land.
Yeah.
Rich white men who own land are the only ones that be allowed to vote. So don't give me that shit.
Don't even get me started on it.
It makes me so angry.
And there's proof that it wasn't, there was a lot of our founding fathers that were not Christian.
Right.
That were atheistic or
Benjamin Franklin was an atheist, wasn't he?
I think he might have been even, there's some rumor that he was a Satanist. And he was part of like a,
he was a Freemason, wasn't he?
Yeah, like some kind of like underground kind of stuff where he did like weird.
He was into the occult.
He was into the occult. And there's a lot of people that were into the occult. But it was about freedom of religion because you
He would be, though. He was such a scientist. Like, he wanted to know how things worked. Mm-hmm. He wanted to try to do things. And it makes sense for him, I think.
Yeah, so
he saw the world.
Our country was meant for freedom of everybody. However, as long as you were a man and you were rich and you were white and you were a man that was rich and white. Anyone else, no.
Yeah, we're only rich white men.
So, when they say, let's make America great again, when was it great?
Then. But it was rich white men who ruled everything.
Yeah. And who's saying that? Rich white men. So, if we say this 50s and 60s were when it was good, then you don't want black people to have rights. Because they did not have them. There was segregation and they were treated terrible.
They also don't want women to have rights.
No, because women didn't have them. They couldn't even have a job. God forbid you put pants on. Like, it's just...
Hey, girls, why don't you go upstairs? Yeah. Yes, please.
So, it's our country is not, we're not the best country in the world. And do we have it better than a lot of places? 100% we do.
But there are places better than
there's places better than us, and we shouldn't strive to be not better than what we are. Why?
We're going backward.
Yeah.
And it's terrifying. And it's like, I'm going to say it again. Go and read The Handmaid's Tale because you will have nightmares because it's happening. Like the shit, obviously not the whole handmaid thing, but the stuff that led to it.
The taking away of rights slowly, and you don't notice it at first.
That's what's happening.
Yeah,
like, we're taking away Roe v. Wade overturned. Now we're slowly chipping away at trans people's rights and LGBTQ rights. And you know what? Women's rights are right there. Women don't realize it. They're going to take away your birth control, and that's how they're going to control you. Mm-hmm. They're going to control your body.
Well, that's what they do. They control your body. And, if you start saying that men can't wear dresses in public, they're going to start saying women can't wear pants.
That's what I said.
And
what do they consider drag?
Exactly. What's drag? Is
it men wearing dresses? Does that mean women wearing pants is drag?
Yeah.
That's what I said.
So,
wear clothes.
You would just put clothes on.
Just wear clothes.
Why does it matter?
It doesn't matter what
it doesn't matter what your clothes are. And the reason why women wore dresses and men wore pants is because men were laboring and working, right? And women were in the kitchen and blah, blah, blah.
Catching themselves on fire with the goddamn dresses.
But it was like stereotypical gender roles that aren't because they were supposed to be that way. It was a way to control women.
Right.
So they weren't able to easily move around and do the things they needed to do.
But, I mean, most of the people... If you read the Bible is not kind to women.
Right.
It is not.
I just saw a thing that said...
So if you're going to let the Bible dictate certain things, pretty soon the Bible is going to dictate everything.
Your rights are gone.
Yes.
If you don't think that your rights are going to be touched, or you're worried about other people getting rights, then you're privileged, one. And two, it's coming for you next.
And the same people who are talking about protect our children... protect our rights as parents. They're the same ones trying to take parents' rights away.
Exactly.
And it's like it's like the Wizard of Oz. Don't look at the man over here. Look at what I'm doing here.
Exactly.
Look at this. Look at this. Look at this. Don't look over there.
Sleight of hand.
Look at this.
That sleight of hand thing that magicians do where they keep your attention over here while they do something over here.
I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to talk to you about, we're going to save our rights as parents because we have the rights to do blah, blah. Yeah, but you're taking parents' rights away. So you're not okay, if you're going to take those parents' rights away, your rights are getting taken away next, you stupid twatsy.
Well, that's what they say. They say, I can't remember what I'm quoting this, but I don't know who I'm quoting it from, and I feel bad. I wish I could remember. But it was like, if we look out for the most marginalized of our population, we're bettering ourselves in the long run.
Right.
If you fight for the rights of the people that are most marginalized and most vulnerable, your rights are being protected also. You're building up a better community for everyone. But you don't get that if you don't fight for everyone's rights.
It's like the pie thing. It's not pie. It's like, just because somebody else has rights doesn't mean they're going to take your rights away.
Because if one person's rights gets taken away, it slowly starts to chip away until the only 1% of the people have any power anymore.
And that's what they want.
Right. Don't let them do it. Don't fall for the scare tactics.
And honestly, there are so many, I'm seeing so many women going on Twitter talking about how they tried to go to the bathroom, and because they didn't fit what men think women are supposed to look like, a girl with PCOS who had facial hair.
Right.
Some guy was swearing at her, telling me, I don't want you using my bathroom.
Right.
With my daughter. I am a woman. And it's like, excuse me? And like, this woman was terrified. She went back in the bathroom and texted her husband to come and talk to this guy. And it's like, you asshole. You know?
Well, and exactly, that's it.
Because the government gave him the right to do that. And it's like, it's not his business.
No.
For one. Like, how is it his business to be a bully? And he's like the bathroom police.
I know.
Like, you don't know anyone else's story.
Not all women are hairless in general.
Right.
And the only reason why women are hairless is because society forced them to be, basically.
Right.
And it all boils down to capitalism and greed. Fear-mongering that's happening to control people it's sickening and gross. And that one video that you sent me, but I had sent you before, showing the guy like mocking the people at the Trump rally. Like, I don't understand why they have to wear t-shirts and and he was like mocking them, saying, but he's making them think he was talking about gay pride.
Yes.
And he was really...
And hats.
And they have these flags they're waving, and they have these t-shirts. And why do they have to be so proud of all that? And they're like, yeah, I know, it's ridiculous. And like, dude, you're standing there with a Trump hat on, a Trump flag in your hand, and a Trump t-shirt. Shirt. There's no different than you being proud of who you voted for, which is creepy, because it's not a sports team.
It's not.
But there's no different than a person that is Irish flying their Irish flag outside their house.
Exactly.
There's no difference. There's pride in who you are, and it's okay to have that. But it was just funny because the people that are like, yeah, it's ridiculous, they're such hypocrites. They had no clue that he was talking about them.
There are a bunch of people online who think that bathroom ban, they're idiots. They think that the trans people are the ones promoting this. I was like, that person is a trans man. You don't want him using your daughter's bathroom?
Right.
This law's going to make him use it because you guys are stupid.
Yeah, exactly.
He looks like a man because he is a man. He's taking hormones. And it's just like, but because he was born female, you want him to use the bathroom. But then you're the same people who would stand outside the bathroom and beat the shit out of him because he shouldn't be using your daughter's bathroom because he's a man.
So you're forcing what you don't want to be happening.
This is the root of it, is these men are so fragile with their egos and their male fragility here.
Oh, huge.
Because they're afraid if a trans woman...
that they may be attracted to them?
Right.
And that makes them gay.
Right. It doesn't make you gay.
It
means you're straight because you like a woman.
Right.
But that's like the worst thing that could ever happen to them is to have them fall in love with a trans woman.
Right.
And that's what this is all boiled down to. And all this happening is because all of these men are afraid of trans women.
I was listening to Trixie and Katya the other day, and Trixie was saying that she wished that it won't, like, eventually it's just going to become, like, you're not going to be like, oh, I'm gay or I'm straight. You're just there. And you love who you love. And that's okay. And that really, you're attracted to whomever you're attracted to. And does it matter?
It doesn't.
It shouldn't matter. Well, who you're having sex with shouldn't matter
to anyone else, but
anyone but you. So we shouldn't
and
have
your partner.
But if you've never if you don't understand why speaking up and advocating for yourself, why you need to do it, then consider yourself privileged. Because if you don't know what that's like to have to do that, then you have a pretty awesome life.
Right.
I just get so frustrated with it. I just don't understand it. And there's the lack of empathy and like not being able to see outside your own little cone of life.
And you know, it's and these like they'll go, we're trying to protect the children and we're banning trans health care, gender affirming care for people. And now it's not just kids though, it's adults.
Right.
So
who have been on hormones for how long?
It's never been about the children.
No.
It's never been about the children. They just said that because they needed an excuse.
It's a good thing you start talking about kids. How can you say you want to hurt kids? You know.
Right. That's what they're like.
Using
if you say
children.
It's about kids and people who say they don't care, it means that they're okay with pedophilia.
Exactly.
And that's their whole thing. I was like, being gay does not make you a pedophile.
No. And the people that are pedophiles typically are white, straight men.
That's like saying being a priest automatically makes you a pedophile. But wait, yeah, it kind of does.
Well, there's a lot of them that are, but it doesn't necessarily
right.
Make
not
you a
all of
pedophile.
them are. There's a lot of them that are, but not all of them.
No.
So,
and if you look, there's a I don't know. I think it's a trans woman on Facebook who posts every week the number of arrests for pedophilia in our country.
I've seen it.
And every week it's
look at all these drag
power.
queens. Look at all these drag queens and transgender people. Look at this one, and it's like a straight man.
Yeah.
It's a white man.
It's a white, and they're all white.
Straight men.
Straight men in power of some sort.
Yep.
Congress. Assemblymen.
A policeman.
Police officers. Church pastors. They're people of power because they get to where they are so they can groom and control people.
That's the whole point of it.
I'm sorry to tell you, but unfortunately our country, drag queens and trans people don't have any power because we will not allow them to, which I wish they would because it'd probably be a better place.
Be much happier.
God, if I could have a drag queen run the world, I'd be so happy.
Trixie, everything be covered with sparkles.
Pink.
Great.
Oh my God.
Pink and fluffy.
Drag queens are my favorite people.
I love them.
And the fact that you can't go to a drag show and appreciate the friggin' talent and beauty and art of it, you're crazy. It's amazing. Drag shows are the coolest thing.
They really are.
It's like modern vaudeville.
It is. It's great.
They're dancing, they're singing, they're funny, they're in the amount of money invested in most of them do their own wigs and do their own.
They have hundreds of wigs.
Yeah, and they fix them the way they want them to and make them beautiful, and then they make their own clothes.
The amount of time it takes just to get into those costumes, I can't even imagine.
I know. I just thought there was a girl on TikTok that she is a cis woman who is a drag queen. And I'm like, how do I sign myself up for that? Please and thank you.
I need this.
This is what I was born to do. I was born to be a drag queen.
You got the hype for it, Colleen. You don't have to be tall, but
you don't. But I was born to be a drag queen. That's my goal. Like, if I could walk out with a big wig on and wearing those clothes. I can't dance though like that. I can't.
In heels?
In heels?
Hell no. I broke myself wearing Crocs on my steps at home.
Oh.
That's like, I watch these drag queens with their freaking stilettos.
And they're doing like splits and backflips.
How can you wear those and not die?
Practice, I guess. I'm just not very graceful.
I could practice every day for
I'm not
100
graceful.
Years and I still would fall. And
some of us just don't got it, unfortunately.
I don't got it, unfortunately.
I can lip sync real well.
Me too. And I could wear platforms.
I could dance around.
But not heels.
But I can't do splits and backflips like they do.
I can't do the splits, no problem. Big problem.
Big problem. Big problems would happen if I tried to split. Yeah, I'd never get back up again.
I want to see Jean-Claude Van Damme in drag.
He can do the splits, all right.
He can do the splits.
Better than most people ever could.
Oh, yeah.
He's like a Ken doll splitter. I know.
Dude, doesn't that hurt? Did you rip your taint? Dude.
How do you, I don't know.
He tore it. He had to have.
He tore it and just like never went back.
Torn, and then that's just it.
Just opened right up wide down there. Horrible. All right.
Didn't you tear your taint?
Well, if you want to talk about taints with us, come to AnchorCon. August 19th and 20th, and we can discuss them there. We're going to be there. We'll do a live show. We don't know which day yet, but we're going to be there for the whole weekend. We'll have a table, so come see us. And when we find out the live show, we will post it on our Facebook and Instagram. So you want to follow us on there. And plus, we also share pictures from our episodes. Maybe there'll be a picture of Jean-Claude.
Doing his splits. No problem.
No problem.
With his torn taint.
Torn taint splits. That's horrifying.
Sorry, I'm punchy today.
Yeah.
If you'd like to reach out to us, we would love to hear from you. You can send us a direct message through Facebook or Instagram on our account, and while you're there, like us.
Yeah.
And rate us, share us, all that good stuff.
Tell everybody.
Yes. You can also send us an email to thecousinsweird@gmail.com. Please send us a letter. Don't send us. You don't need to send us a letter. That's asking a lot of somebody. Reach out to us. Send us a story. Any weird stories you have of letter writing or taints.
Did you tear your taint? No.
Doing a side split. Let us know. We're dying.
We're dying to know.
We're dying to know. But yeah.
God.
We're a lot of fun.
If you want to support our podcast, the best way is to tell everyone you know. Tell all your friends. Run down the street like Paul Revere.
Don't tell everybody about torn taints because they might not
come to listen to us. But
only special people will appreciate that.
But become it's the 4th of July time. Become Paul Revere. But go around saying, listen to Cousins Weird! Listen to Cousins Weird! To all your friends down the street. The weirdos are coming! The weirdos are coming! The weirdos are coming! Do that. No one will lock you up anywhere. It'll be great.
It'll be great. Free advertising for us.
And you could go to patreon.com/thecousinsweird for $1 a month, become a freaky friend, and you get a free sticker and bonus content. And then for $5 a month, become a terrible trender. You get a free sticker, a yearly gift, bonus content, ad-free episodes, and a quarterly Skype chat with us, and we'll discuss taints.
Only if you want.
Only if you want to. We'll never mention it again if you don't want to. Don't worry.
All right.
Once you say the word taint, I can't stop saying the word taint. I don't know what's
Especially a torn taint.
Yeah. TT. You got a TT?
No torn taints here. Get a t-shirt. A torn taint t-shirt.
Torn taint t-shirt. God, that's horrifying. All right, friends. I think we've about done.
We're done.
Okay.
Stay freaky.
Oh, that's right. Don't forget your part. Bye.
Bye.